Simone Davis here from the Montessori Notebook and Jacaranda Tree Montessori. I'm glad that you can join me today. This is the first Google Hangout that we've done on air, so it's going to be interesting. We've had a few technological problems. We're waiting for Jean-Marie Pena to join us. She might join us later, but otherwise I'll answer your questions for you. So today we're hoping to give you more ideas of what Montessori activities you can include for your child at home. And we've asked you to send in your questions and we'll go through and have a look at them now. So I think we'll start with a question that came in one of the Facebook groups today, and that was about whether or not your child should have Montessori materials at home when they begin in a Montessori preschool. And she was just wondering what kind of activities can I include instead on my shelves if I'm not going to have Montessori materials. So the best advice I received when my children started Montessori preschool was not to have any Montessori materials at home, because they're spending 6 hours a day at least in the classroom working with materials. And so the last thing that you need at home is doing it again. Not only will they maybe get bored of the materials, but also you may confuse them if you present them incorrectly or in a different way, and they won't be sure exactly how to use the materials at home, or either way. So you may actually slow down their development. So instead, I always suggest having practical life activities, including them into your daily life. So things like preparing dinner together, baking, having visitors over, and getting ready for their visit can be really nice. I love board games with, 3 and above year olds. They can start to follow the rules. I was suggesting a game called Shopping List, and it's a really cute game where you have a little shopping list and like a memory game, so that all of the cards are laid out and you turn over the card. Broccoli, is that on my shopping list? No, it's not, and they put it down. But the child who has got broccoli on their shopping list has to remember where it was, and they pick up that piece. There's some other really simple games that you can do. There's another one called Orchard, which I really like, and that has fruit on trees, and you roll the dice, and if it's red, you collect a cherry into your basket, and you're all actually working together in this game, so there's not a lot of competition, which is good for this kind of age group. And you can work against the raven to fill up your baskets. And I've just got really exciting news for you. You might have seen Jean-Marie Pena pop up at the bottom of our screen. Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can. It's nice and clear. Great.
Great.
So, Jean-Marie, I was just in the middle of answering the first question. I got started, and it was a question that was whether or not you should include Montessori materials at home once your child starts Montessori preschool. And we were talking about how instead of having a duplicate, because they're already working so much at school, and you might also confuse them by giving them a different lesson with the materials, that it's better to have practical life activities. I was talking about some simple board games that 3 to 6 year olds can enjoy. And I would also welcome your input as well as to other activities that you'd put on your shelves at home, where she still wants to have some elements of self-control, like the control of errors, that are kind of educational as well. Do you have any favorites?
Well, I mean, like you say, all of the practical life. I just really believe that the child at home should really be able to enjoy their time off from their work. I don't believe in having the didactic Montessori material at home. I remember having a child in my class that was loving all the math material, and the father absolutely wanted to buy the same for the home. And for me, that's not a good idea, because we want them to be excited about coming into the Montessori environment and get to work with what they're choosing to work that day. So for me, the home should really be, you know, like you say, practical life, board games, having just free playtime to go explore outside in the garden, cook and so forth, and learning how to care for themselves more than anything is important.
Yeah, and caring for themselves, what kind of things would you recommend maybe for someone who hasn't been involved in them?
So care for themselves is really about setting up that self-care area for them to be able to choose a piece of clothing, to be able to dress themselves. So a small stool with a mirror so they can practice. I don't believe in making the entire wardrobe accessible. So just like cooking with children, there's a little bit of prep work to do. So I recommend choosing 2 or 3 outfits that you are comfortable with, depending on the weather or the occasion, and letting them choose from there. And knowing that if they mismatch, it's okay. It's their fashion statement, so it's fine. And so that, and also self-care in the bathroom, to have access to water, to be able to wash their hands and face, brush their teeth, and so forth. So it's really about just instilling more independence and self-control in the home, which they are learning to do in the Montessori environment as well.
Yeah, it's kind of all about like the daily life, isn't it? Just involving them in everything. So rather than putting them in front of the TV while you're preparing dinner, invite them to join you. Or they're welcome to play with some blocks and some farm animals and building their own farm or some kind of free play activity or out in the garden. Sounds great. Yes. So one of the other activity questions that came in was about entertaining a very active baby. And that's a really tricky age group, I think, because they're very capable, but at the same time, it's more difficult to get them involved in some of the larger puzzles or other activities. Have you got any suggestions for babies?
So when you say baby, I mean that first year there's just such a wide range. So, you know, when we're talking baby, are we talking baby that is on a floor mat?
No, kind of 11 months, starting to crawl around and explore.
Okay. So I would just really make sure that the home environment is safe, so that they can crawl around. I mean, I think the gross motor movement is very important at this age. So even if there's little obstacles that can be placed, you know, whether it's something to try to crawl over or around or under, that tends to just be wonderful for them at this age. And having little, you know, very simple toys that are accessible on a low shelf here and there, or in a basket somewhere where they know they will always find it, so that it's always in the same place.
This might be a good time to show some of the slides of some of the baby
food. Yes, you have some wonderful slides ready. Yes.
see if I can get back to you guys. Is there anything else that you wanted to add on?
No, just that these are all wonderful ideas. That it's just I have parents who seemed a little bit overwhelmed, like they need to get so much toys and items. And one or two of these things. It's, Simone just showed us a lovely array, but really the child, needs 1, 2, or 3 maximum to really kind of develop their mastery of using some of this material. And, those puzzles that is just one shape, you can just have one of the shapes out. It seems very simple to us, but that is really very intense eye-hand coordination of fitting that shape into the insert. So really letting them practice and repeat as often as they want until they've mastered it. And then when they mastered it, you trade it out for something that has just a tiny bit more of a challenge.
Okay, great. That's a really interesting question. My child is only busy with vehicles. How can I get him to do something else? He's 2 years old. And I think this is a great question because I get asked it a lot in my classroom. Parents are always worried about children taking on a strong interest in vehicles at the expense of all other things.
And I say that's fine. It's an interest that they have, and why not, let them explore, even, create language cards. I remember of the traffic signals that are, no U-turn or right turn only, or all of just the arrows and the crossed out. And to me, that was just fascinating. And he was just intense about it. Afterwards, I actually bought him a book with, how to learn all of the, to pass your driver's test. So it had all the visuals in it. And he knew them all, and he was the great co-pilot. And so I think those are things that are just, parents need to remember that these are temporary, that they are a fascination that they have right now in the moment, and that it's okay. That to encourage that or to go with it, I think is just fine. Once they have mastered and they have information that they're seeking from that interest, they will move on to something else. So I wouldn't really concern myself. And again, in this room, your child, but who was fascinated and just kept on repeating that again, and it was in the mathematics area. And I remember being a little concerned, like, do I need to guide him somewhere else? And I remember my mentor at the time just, explained that this was an interest of his right now, and to really let it be. And it's true that a week later he moved on to something else and had satisfied the need of mastering that skill. So I think it's just important to respect their interests.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think there's so many possibilities for language development in terms of a 2-year-old. The way that they just, you can, instead of saying truck, 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 and you can really give them, that's a front wheel loader, and this one's a delivery vehicle, and this one's a motorbike, and there's so many different things. I think I just froze a little bit in my image, but we'll see how things go. I love this question too. It's about getting prepared for school. So her daughter's about to start after the 3 to 6 environment, and she's wondering what she could focus on in the next 6 weeks, except for following the child to assist the transition. In other words, what would you have preferred as parents to have done prior and during the attendance of a child in a facility practice run by you, and a relationship's meant to last for years? She wants to really work with us, you know. Do you have any good ideas?
Well, my idea would be, again, that whole, self-care. They're going to be needing to care for themselves in the environment. I mean, the guide has, 25, sometimes more children. There is another adult, but children need to really have that sense of, I'm capable of meeting my own personal needs. So, I can go to the bathroom on my own. If I soil my clothes, I can change my clothes. I know where they are. When it's time to set the table, I'm going to know how to wash my hands. And it's really that sense of going through the progression of choosing something, working with it, putting it back. All of that, I think, is learned very quickly in the environment. But if at home we can have simple, practical life, such as preparing one's own snack or helping with dinner, but really having that sense of sequence, of there's a progression of getting the work out, setting it up, and cleaning up. I think that was, for me, one of the struggles of, oh, your work isn't finished. Here, let's go clean it up, because I think that's really important for them to know that the material needs to be put back properly, so another child can also work with it.
Yeah, that's definitely something they can practice at home.
Yes.
And
I don't really believe in, like I said earlier, of, having specific Montessori material. I mean, I think it's really about learning to observe our children and taking note as to where their interests are, and maybe where they're having a challenge, whether it's, how to hold a utensil or so forth, and just also establish a good communication with your guide, so that if you see something, you can let them know, and they can most often give you good ideas as to, something that they could do at home. I know when children, I feel, have weak hands, I realize that at home they're not being given a lot of work for their hands. So I encourage families to make bread, for example, so that they're really kneading dough and strengthening the muscles of the hands. So things like that.
That's actually a perfect interlude. So I had one more question about an adult who is developing their hand strength for writing, but they kind of really avoid writing and drawing. And so what alternative activities you could come up with? And so some of the things I was thinking of, we have a prick work activity. I'm not sure if you have the same, where children starts to stay on the line with a prick pen. And the children often don't realize they're doing writing, but actually they're learning to stay on the line. And I find that a really useful activity that they can do at home that they might not have in their Montessori classroom. And also threading activities are nice for developing hand strength and hands together. They're not wanting to do writing and drawing, they can have kind of skills. But have you got some questions for building
that and like kneading dough or doing things with clay. Clay needs to be, you need to have strong hands to shape it. So I like all of that. Gardening, digging, a lot of the kind of finer cooking. Really, I mean, there's so much we can do, with the hands. And it's also the puzzles, all of to get that pincer grip to be, also painting. And sometimes painting can just be, I like to do just water painting outside. on a warm day, you have water and you start just making shapes, and then they'll disappear because of the heat, or so that it doesn't involve, big, it doesn't have to be big and messy and you need paper and paints and everything. There's plenty of things that can be done with just kind of on a whim.
I like that. Also, even in the bath, you've got bath toys that can be squeezed, and it also gives you hand strength, and they're fun.
Yes,
They have lots of fun with water. So
and that makes me think of the window washing when you have a spray bottle. That's a very nice strengthening activity as well.
There's a question here about siblings. My youngest son is always wanting to do whatever my daughter is doing. She gets frustrated. Oh, sorry, he gets frustrated. I'm worried he's not doing the right things for his age.
Yeah, and I think to me it's going to depend on the age difference. But I think it's fine, if a younger child wants to try to do what the older child is doing. It's that there's an interest there. I mean, it's just like in the Montessori environment where we have mixed ages. I mean, there's a reason for that, to kind of, get them excited about something that's down the road, but also maybe again through observation, if we see what it is in that particular activity that interests them, we can try to isolate that and give them a particular activity that is maybe specific to that. So I mean, I would need kind of an example from this parent as to what the child is doing, but I don't know, maybe it's an older brother who is constructing something. So he's, using a hammer and nails, and the younger child is too young to have control, and you wouldn't want them to hurt themselves. Then you get, one of those activities that you showed earlier, where it is about hammering, but just a different thing, so that they can have some sort of parallel and be working on similar things, but just for different levels of mastery, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. We have another question about, when do you think that you could leave scissors out safely in your home environment for your child? Because I know in our classroom we have them out at 16 months, but I guess at home parents could be worried that they're busy, they go off to the bathroom and they don't really want to come back and see their toddler with scissors in their hands.
I think scissors, it's true that if you are not there with eyes, scissors can be not dangerous, but you might end up having things that you didn't necessarily want cut in small pieces, cut, or siblings, new hairstyle or things like that. So scissors need to be accessible to very young children, but maybe have them up at a place where you can put them out on the shelf when you are around and you are aware that the scissors are there. If you are going out for, a long time and you don't have a vision on what's going on, I would maybe wait till maybe 2.5, but that it really, I mean, it's so depending on the maturity of the child and what they're able to do with scissors. I mean, if it's just the beginning of discovering scissors, they are so fascinated with this tool that they are intrigued to cut a lot of things. So satisfy that need while you're around, so that, they're not going to damage things. But I mean, I don't think they can really hurt themselves with scissors. It's more hurting material around your home.
Yeah, I think that's so. We'll lead into the last question, and it was actually about setting up a painting area at home that their child can use independently. And I thought that was probably to show a picture of our painting board stuck around a tree. So while I get that open, if there's anything you can think of that you'd like to say.
About painting, I mean, painting is a wonderful activity. It does tend to get a little messy. So I do, encourage that it be on a floor like you have here that is easily cleaned up, or outside if you have that possibility, whether it be on a balcony or in a garden, just so that we can not be so concerned about getting paint everywhere. The process of cleaning up the painting area is very, very important, and it can be done as a secondary activity, but the child does need to be shown how to do that. And here I love it that you just have two colors, the black and the white. I would, recommend that when you first start, it's just one color. Just choose one of the three primary colors, and have the child really master the use of the paintbrush, the use of the space of the paper to keep it on the paper, and also have a tray of, a sponge and some water so that they can clean up if they've gotten water on the easel. I remember I had even another activity where if the child really wanted to get that easel clean, we had a big brush and they would, clean the entire easel, because it would get a little messy with 24 children painting. And then the other thing that I think we don't think about is really limiting the number of pieces of paper. It's just that sense of being careful not to waste. And I think that is something that we can model to our children from the beginning, so that what we are painting is really intentional, and it's really, we have, let's say, 2 pieces of paper, we have 2 chances, as opposed to having, an unlimited supply of paper. Then we tend to just kind of maybe be a little bit more wasteful. So I like to, let parents kind of think of that as well.
That's really interesting. I do the opposite. I kind of say, you don't have
Really?
to fill up the page, and then I allow the child to repeat and repeat. And I don't find many children use more than 1 piece, but some children, when they're really in a painting stage, will use, say, 5 that day. So it's interesting that I see reasons for both, and I think the waste, though, it's a valid thing, particularly if that child was always just putting 1 dot on each page or something. But what I find is, I like them, if they just want to fill up the left corner, then they just fill up the left corner, and then they kind of indicate they're done, and I change the paper and help them change it. We also have it slightly differently. Rather than a sponge to clean the board, we have a wet cloth on the side, the black cloth, and they can wipe their hands on that.
I see, yes, it's hanging there, yes.
Yeah, so that's how we've found quite good without having a bucket to be spilled. But yeah, we've also got some paper over to the right that they can help themselves, and the older children like to do the whole process. Sometimes they take down the paper that's already on the board so they can do the whole process. Okay, well, one last question has come in, so maybe we can have a look at it. It says, when you follow the child, it all goes back to observation. And how could we parents learn or know that we're observing correctly and interpreting our observations correctly? I think that's really interesting, because we spend 250 hours of our training observing children and learning to be very objective in our when we observe children. And I guess parents don't have to learn on the run, and they're wondering, am I interpreting what I see correctly?
So what I've worked with parents and recommended, and they've said how wonderful, that work is I really recommend keeping a little journal, having a little notebook that is close by, so that when your child is involved in an activity, working, you can sit back. For one, it's going to help you not interrupt, so that you have your own work and you are just writing down just what you see. There does not need to be, preconceived ideas or comparison with the next door neighbor's child or your sister's child or whatever. It's really about seeing what is in front of you. So really describing in the details of, Joey is picking up the pencil, he's walking over to the shelf, he's taking a piece of paper, he's sitting on the floor, whatever it is, so that you get in the habit of really observing without judgment, without having this notion of you need to figure something out. And it does take practice, and it does take, a little bit of work on ourselves. But like I say, if we have a little notebook that we know is just for that, where we can just start writing. And sometimes on the side, I like to draw a line and have on the side what I'm feeling, so that, if they pick up the scissors and you feel uncomfortable, just write, I'm feeling a little tense, because then that was going to also help you see what your reactions are. But it's just kind of the practice of learning to observe without judgment, and really learning to observe what is in front of you, of this little human being just doing what is of interest to them. From there, you are going to see patterns, and you are going to discover that there are things that the child likes to repeat. That is going to help you to put out material that is going to help them master whatever that skill that they're trying to figure out. So, for me, observation is really key to not only being a Montessori guide, but being a parent. I know I spent a lot of time, and I don't know if it's the Parisian in me, where we, people watching is a sport, where we sit on the cafe terrace and watch people. But that's, it should be enjoyed, and really observing what the child is trying to do.
Perhaps it's a nice idea to just give people a little bit of information about you, how you came to Montessori, and any big projects you're working on at the moment.
So I'm Jeanne-Marie, and I am the mother of two wonderful teenagers. So I'm kind of beyond this, the early ages, but believe strongly that the first 6 years are crucial in for our children in setting up a good foundation for them for the rest of their lives. I came to Montessori really very organically, I would say. I read Montessori, The Discovery of Childhood, when I was pregnant with my first one. And it really made a very big impression on me of how important it was to really follow the child, and that I would learn to be a parent if I followed my child. And it just made so much sense. And I think it really helped me parent with just a lot of intuition and just following my daughter. And much later, about 8 years later, when I had my son, I decided to kind of have a big career change. I was in advertising. I was a designer working in a big American corporation, and just really, it had been in the back of my mind for a long time that I really wanted to be in the presence of children, and that there was a lot of work to be done, and that's where I needed to be. So I actually looked into Montessori training, and I'm very fortunate that there is a wonderful training center here in San Diego, an AMI training center, that I started my primary training. And from then on, it was the best decision I've ever made. And, you know, the rest is kind of history. But basically, I did my 3 to 6 training, worked in the classroom for many years. Then, and with that 3 to 6 training, got my master's in Montessori education. And then a few years later, decided that I needed the 0 to 3 because when you are in the casa, you welcome children 2.5, sometimes a little younger, and they haven't quite, they're not quite there yet in their, how do you say, in their awareness or consciousness. And I felt like there was a piece of the puzzle missing in my knowledge of the child. So I went back and did my 0 to 3 with Judy Orion in Denver. And since then, I've decided that I really enjoy working with parents, and have developed my business around just coaching parents to set up their homes so that they are living with children in harmony, because we tend to have very adult-centered environments. And when a child comes into our space, we're constantly telling them no, or we're stressed out because they're going to get into something. So I really like to work with parents about just modifying the environment just a little bit. I mean, it doesn't involve much. As one father asked me once if he needed to move, and I said, no, you don't need to move. It's just a little bit of, changing things around and making things available, because children are capable of so much more if we give them those possibilities, and if we allow them to show us what they're capable of. So it's really about wanting to help parents parent with more joy and confidence, and helping children feel, good in their homes, that they're able to do a lot of things for themselves.
Well, thank you, Jean-Marie, for all your time today and for joining us. And I hope those of you who are watching, we've answered your questions. If we didn't get to your question, please shoot me an email and I can write back to you, get Jean-Marie to write back to you, or we'll do another one of these soon. So we'll sign off now and hope to catch you soon. All right, bye-bye. I hope this information has been useful. If you'd like more practical tips about the Montessori approach in your home, come to themontessorinotebook.com.